y'all? So welcome to another alternative factuals video, and I'm going to dive into some very interesting information. Nothing that's not necessarily public per se, but I am going to kind of chat about it because obviously I'm trying to make your jobs easier by not researching information. But I'm going to be talking about Stranger Things season 3 and the timeline that's going to be taking place in season 3. Now, when I say timeline, I'm not referring to I'm going to go all the way back to season 1 and then evaluate where exactly everything falls on a specific timeline, but I'm going to tell you the year in which everything takes place for season 3, as well as how long after season 2 this is going to be taking place, as well as what falls into where in season 3 specifically. But before I dive into any of that, please be sure to, of course, like, share, and subscribe, or leave your comments down below. Let me know your theories, your thoughts, all that good stuff, all that jazz. And without further ado, let's really dive into this. So this is basically the official synopsis from Netflix, and like I said, we're going to talk about it. They give you a lot of information off the back, like when this takes place and how exactly these relationships are going to be reflected, but I'll be sure to put this on the screen so that way you guys will be able to see it. So from Netflix, it says, in mid-1985, when the box office was dominated by the presence of Back to the Future, Mike and Eleven have developed a romantic relationship, as have Max and Lucas. So Lucas obviously being the African-American kid, and Max being the redhead girl, you know, a nice little couple. And then you have Max and Eleven, which was hinted at since the very first day. Back to the Future was it was a very interesting time for the 80s, a very influential movie, and even though I wasn't born yet, it was still a phenomenal movie. I enjoyed all of them, at least me personally. A nice little sci-fi time travel kind of thing. It was one of the first of its kind, so you can definitely see like how this kind of changes their perspective on life, as well as not just, you know, the whole thing with the upside down, but just it's a very interesting time in the 80s. Fun time, enjoyable, but besides the point. Now in the synopsis, we get to the point where they actually say however, 1 year after the defeat of the Mind Flayer. So we already know that 1985 is the year in which basically this is all taking place, mid 1985, and this is a year this is actually a year after the whole events of season 2, basically. So it's been a year. So we see that Eleven has her hair. We see that she's officially been adopted. We see that she's interacting. Basically, it's been a year without any kind of crazy events taking place from season 2 since, you know, the whole Mind Flayer thing, obviously. Now, it says also in the synopsis from Netflix is that the town has a new leader, a morally corrupt Mayor Klein, whose administration presided over the construction of the new Starcourt Mall. So remember, previously they didn't have a mall in the TV show at all, because obviously this is a small town. And for those of you who are not aware, this is something that actually does happen in real life. Small towns are usually against larger malls because they usually tend to take out competition for mom and pop shops that have different services and different needs and necessities and all that stuff, because basically that's how small towns operate. So when a mayor comes in and then is basically for a mall being created, or if I want to make this a little bit more relatable to life, let's say a small town comes in and they all of a sudden get a Walmart. Then Walmart has pretty much everything: groceries, electronics, tools, whatever you need, they have it. So it's going to squash the competition in the town for the other stores, and then basically those stores will go out of business, and then basically that town is going to be really reliant on Walmart. But same concept, it's just a mall. Now for the next section of this, it says, with the 4th of July approaching, strange things start to happen. Lucas's sister Erica discovers a mysterious new threat, and a lifeguard at a community pool suddenly disappears, triggering fear in those that still have the events from the previous year still fresh in their minds. So despite the fact that we were focusing on the main group of people in Stranger Things, you know, the sheriff, the kids, the mother, and the 2 siblings as well, you know, basically we were focusing on the main cast. Don't forget, a lot of these people still remember when a lot of these kids were going missing, or when strange events were taking place in the town. We just didn't really focus on the other people outside of the main cast, simply because I guess they were not relevant to the plot. But people do still remember what happened in that town a year ago. So remember, people are still recovering from a lot of the stuff that's taking place. Imagine how Will is feeling right now. Not only was he on the upside down for I think about a week or so, but he was actually taken over by the shadow monster that was from the other side. And you know, basically the shadow monster has now identified them as threats. He was using Will as a way to kind of see into the real world, because remember, his ultimate goal is to take over. The final boss battle for Stranger Things is to fight that giant shadow monster, and he is trying to basically get over into the real world from the upside down. And obviously that made it a little more difficult, especially because 11 is vastly more powerful than a lot of her siblings, or whatever you want to call them, similar experiments, because she was able to close down a portal. And that made things seem very difficult, at least for the shadow monster. But we still see that, you know, somehow he still can cause influence on this side of the realm, or basically he can still send his creatures or monsters or whatever you want to call those little creatures to do his bidding, basically, and cause fear for the real world, or basically our aspect of reality. So now that we know how things are going to be laid out, like I said, it's take place in mid-1985, meaning it's a year after the events of season 2. We already know this. We already know that basically it's been almost a year since, you know, we've had these couplings of 11 and Mike and Max and Lucas, who have been together in relationships and obviously affecting the dynamic of the group. They're gonna basically be fighting two fronts. They always seem to be fighting multiple battles in these TV shows, but for this season it's gonna be more or less the mayor and his corrupt kind of background, and then also what's going on with the upside down, these creatures, these supernatural forces that are gonna be going down, basically happening in this town. So it's gonna be a very interesting take for season 3. I've always enjoyed the first 2 seasons, but I know for a fact that season 3 is going to be one of those battles where, like, the kids or overall the town is not going to be happy with the mayor. They're not going to be really enjoying his run as the mayor of the town. And even, I'm pretty sure some details about the mayor is going to get revealed in this season, about how he even became mayor, or somehow he's going to be involved with this whole government experiment related to the upside down. There's going to be something about him that's going to be revealed and kind of confirm everything that we're reading right now, everything that we're seeing right now, about how shady he is, how corrupt he is, and how he has no good intentions for the people in this town. And it's going to be a very nice watch, I believe, because I don't think we've ever taken the time to get to know how the town works. For the first 2 seasons, we've primarily focused on the groups and the sheriff and basically the upside down, the creatures and all those nasty monsters that are coming out from an alternate dimension. But we've never taken the time to really get to know the town. How does the town work? The relationship between the other neighbors and the relationship between the other store owners. We've never gotten to experience what the town is going to be like. And I think for this season, we are going to get to experience that in multiple ways. And I think the mayor is going to be the key in which we're going to find out how things works in this town, as well as what he's up to and what his involvement is with the government, possibly, or even what his involvement is when it comes to the satisfaction of his townsfolk. But let me know what y'all think. Now, there is one thing I did want to discuss, and it was related to the whole fact that Netflix included the fact that in 1985, that's the whole Back to the Future situation. Now, for those of you who've never seen the film, it is basically a time travel film and dealing with alternate realities and alternate timelines and changing alternate timelines and all that stuff. It's a little bit of a trippy film, but like I said, in the 80s, that was one of the first of its kind. We've had sci-fi films, and don't get me wrong, the graphics were not phenomenal, but it was still good for the time in which it came out. Now, I think when they decided to use this as a reference in order to base the time frame in which this all took place, I think this is also a way for them to identify the stakes of the situation for season 3. Now, even though Back to the Future was relatively comedic, in a lot of ways the concept of time travel, even in movies like Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, and many various different TV shows like The Flash, time travel is it's a very dire thing. And simply because one event can cause a whole cascading of events to kind of unfold completely different. And it's kind of this way for this whole upside down situation for this town, where, okay, they use Back to the Future to represent in 1985 that, yes, a year after everything that has been good. But then this is kind of a standing point or a point in time or a bookmark, I would say, in time in which this movie comes out and then things start happening that's very strange. So in this kind of way, it's kind of like not a metaphor per se, but more or less just an analogy. The movie is an analogy for what's taking place in the series in a certain way, shape, or form, where this is the stakes that we are dealing with in season 3. Things can literally change the outcome of history of this town if they do not stop the monsters or the events that are taking place. Because think of it like this: if they manage to defeat the shadow monster, or basically the final boss for the monster that is going to basically try and come to the real reality from the upside down, then things will kind of progress the way it's supposed to in the universe of, Stranger Things, basically. But let's say if they don't defeat him, things are going to transpire a lot differently compared to what they would have been if they would have defeated him. Meaning, at this point, they're at a crossroads within their timeline, within their universe. This is something that is very important. And if they do not fix this problem, they do not solve this problem, then it's going to be a bigger problem for history. And then history will kind of put that town down in its history books as a complete failure, or the one time where, you know, they had a chance to do something about a big event and then they lost or they were defeated. And if you know anything about history, history is not kind to those who have failed. But that's just my little 2 cents. What I think, you know, the whole Back to the Future reference was, because like I said, it is a very massive time traveling movie, and I think it is a little trope or a little analogy to the events that is taking place within this whole Stranger Things universe, and how big and how serious the stakes are, especially since the whole time travel movie was the first of its kind, and it did carry huge, massive stakes within the movie itself. But let me know what you think, and if you're new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below, your opinions, theories, all that stuff. I want to hear every last bit of it. And without further ado, I'll see you later on. Peace out.